oh my God, you remind me of, and I'm thinking like, okay, who can it be, you know, De Niro, DiCaprio, who? And then you remind me of Jet Li, of Jackie Chan.
And either you're playing this, not so educated, or you're the bougie black girl, the one token black girl is what I like to call it.
I really gave up. I thought, I don't fit in any role. I don't fit into a Caucasian role. I don't fit into a Hispanic role, so I'm out.
I did some traveling after I graduated from college, and then I came back to Texas and my brother was murdered. Yeah, in order to not, I've told the story so many times and it's still jarring, because in order to not go through a depression, I just started writing.
When I was a kid, I loved Disney movies, and I always it's cliche, but I always dreamed of being like the first Filipino princess. That sounds so funny. I still have the dream till now.
Again, like I said, most of the roles that I get are either I'm a thug or robber somebody, killing somebody, but I really don't get parts that are really laid back.
We're human. We're gonna get discouraged. We're gonna beat ourselves down at times, but once again, I know I am destined to do something, even if it is just to become a great actor and touch everybody on the four corners of the earth. That's what I'm going to do. So I have to continue to go down my path and my journey. And then once again, those discouraging moments are the times where I'm just feel like I can't do it. But those are honestly the moments you find out who you are even more.
Sometimes in the breakdowns, I'll see the description first, and then I'll say, oh, but we're looking for this race. And I'm like, oh man, I was so right for that. Because I'm not that stereotypical black girl. So it's like, oh, this is me, oh, but I can't just because of my race.
I've considered myself a character actor. I would like to say I auditioned for the hero parts. I've on stage I've been angry a lot.
We're not just your gangsters, your mobsters, your drug cartels, or your janitors. We're businessmen, we're lawyers, we're, working father in the fields, etc.
I just saw that Denzel Washington wants to play James Bond, and that'd be great. I don't think it's ever gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna happen because black guys are not that guy.
Mostly the characters that I go for, either it's comedy, okay? I did for Gangland, I did a Cholo kind of ordeal.
I have a look that I get stopped all the time and asked, don't I know you? No, but for some reason I've been told by casting directors consistently, you have a look that's very changeable and you can be an everyday woman.
Even in regular life outside of acting, I just wish that people could get along, that people could see each other just past the skin. Because if we all peeled our skin off, we would just be the same. You couldn't tell at all who we were.
But he didn't say, this is a rap, be more black. He was just kind of feel a little bit more kind of thing, things like that. What you'll hear that you never really say, be more ethnic, be more urban.
Like I can't play a Russian, for instance, because I'm not blonde, or I can't play the Ukrainian, that they fall into that specific look of blonde characters. I can't play those, and I was specifically told that actually.
A lot of student films and low budget movies always look for the all-American type, which is either black or white, and I'm neither, so it's really hard to go out for that, or actually not hard, I can't just go out for that role, because it's just we need a white, blonde, skinny female, or we need, the typical ghetto black girl, and it's just I can't do.
Do you ever feel pressured to be more like a stereotype instead of just who you are? Do you ever feel pressured when you go in for an audition, or you got the part and they say, you know what, can you tweak this and do it a little different, and you feel that you're pressured?
Yeah, the pressure is that you want to work, right? And so you want to please the people, right? That the producer, the director, and so there is that, I'm gonna swallow my pride on this one and let me go in here, and even though I know that is maybe so stereotypical that it's not even based in reality, but it's kind of what they want, And you always have that, I always call it that look in the mirror moment. You know, it's before you're waiting to go on set, and you know, they're doing your makeup, you finish, and you're sitting there and you're like, you know, you're getting ready to go on, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, man, I got to really, you know, do I really have to do this? But you know, you want to work. Every actor in LA is, you know, wants to work, and so sometimes you kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit. But it is part of the distastefulness of it makes the business a little distasteful. I mean, I know a lot of actors and directors, very talented, super talented, that they just don't get their opportunity because in some cases maybe they're not willing to do that.
I deal with that pretty much, you know, every week as an actor, you know, in terms of the way I take my photographs, in terms of the way I present myself. I'm always feeling like maybe I'm not finding as much success as I want, or that I'm not getting as many opportunities as I want, because me personally, I tend to have a more of a rebellious, kind of a stubborn flair about me, you know, and so that's great, you know, as a person. I think a lot of my friends appreciate sort of who I am, but oftentimes I feel like, well, maybe I should just play into the fact that, you know, I'm no matter who I am, I walk in, they're gonna see an Asian, you know, kid, you know, who's not extraordinarily good looking, not too tall, not too big. He's just sort of a normal kid, and I'm not gonna get to be, you know, the hero, the action hero, or whatever, you know. And so sometimes I do think about how to not play into the stereotype, but embrace things that you can't change about yourself, and embrace the fact that we're often making, you know, movies and TV for people who are not as well versed about diversity, or they don't care about that topic or whatever.
I was talking to my Shakespeare professor, and she told me that. She's like, don't listen to those people, because I had someone tell me, you're not the ingenue type, and you're not going to be able to play that. You should probably stick to the characters. I had somebody tell me that specifically that way. And it wasn't like you can play these kind of characters, it's just you'll never play the ingenues. So when I was in Shakespeare class and we would pick out monologues from a play, I would always go for the characters. I would never go for the leads. And my professor was like, why don't you pick that? That would be better for you. And I was like, well, I'm not really the leading lady. I can just play the character a lot better, and I will have fun with that. And I feel comfortable with that, you know? She was like, no, Steph, you need to get the leading lady. And she would hand me that monologue. And that would be the stretch for me. And all of a sudden, a whole new world of characters would open up for me. And she would look at me and be like, oh, okay, now we can give you this one as well. And all of a sudden, she'd start handing me the leading ladies. And I was like, but I'm not supposed to play that. You know, in my head, I got stuck to that concept. And that was the biggest shock for me. That was the biggest kind of uncomfortable little bubble of the actor that says, oh my gosh, you're opening new worlds for me that I don't know if I'm comfortable with right now. That was taking me out of my comfort zone that they put me in. Does that make sense? That was the biggest place that I felt shocked as, and I felt like I was stretching beyond even the limits I felt like I could go to.
I feel a bit insulted when someone talks to me, or you're reading something, and I was reading for this feature movie, and you should be the thug. You know, you should be. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I have more to my character than that. You know, it's more, but I know that's just, they're thinking that because of whatever social ideas that have been ingrained in their heads, they just automatically flip that switch. Oh, you should be the thug, or you should be the robber, or you should be someone who's negative. And it really kind of turns you the wrong way. But at the same time, you have to realize that, you know, you have to be able to communicate with people and say, listen, yeah, you know what, I could play that role as a robber or as a thug, but why don't I try this other character? Let's see what happens if I do this character. You know, so you have to be subtle, and you have to be really professional.
A director asked me, can you be more ghetto? And I was like, okay, sure. And of course, you know, I'm from Washington, D.C., so inner city, so I can go there and portray these characters, but that's so not who I am, and I always think it's more comfortable to add a little spice of who I am into it.
I won't even submit for things that, and I, for lack of a better word, like the loud, sassy neighbor or whatever that you see in a lot of African American films and TV. And it's kind of hard because you don't want to like say, okay, that's just bad, you know, because there's lots of people that do that work. But I've always fought, even in my personal life, with as an African American, not being either black enough or being just too articulate, if that makes sense. And that's ridiculous, I know, because what else would I be? But if I see anything that's slated like an extreme of who I should be as a black person or as an African American, I won't even submit because I don't agree with that, and I wouldn't feel good at the end of the day presenting myself in that regard, even as a character, because unless it was justified artistically or if it meant something, or if it was like the way the journey of the character, I don't agree with it, so I wouldn't even submit myself. And I've never been put in that box so far, thankfully.
For me as an artist, I feel like you should put a bit of yourself in it. So when someone or a director tells me to tone it down, it's hard because you want to follow your gut, but then at the same time you're like, he's a director, he's my boss, I got to do what he says. So it's like I try to sneak it in a bit because, I mean, what's the meaning of an artist? An artist is being who you truly are. So I know you have to portray the character, but a part of me still says just put a bit of you in it, you know what I mean?
I'm from West Africa. I've never lived in a country long enough to call it my home in that sense. I was born in Sierra Leone. I lived there for 5 years. The war broke out. I moved to Senegal, Europe, and Canada. So moving to the States last year, I found that every time people, okay, how do I put this? Basically, when people see me or casting directors see me, they say, okay, she's gonna play the best ghetto girl, or she'll be ghetto girl. But then the minute I open my mouth and start speaking, it's like, whoa, what's going on? So I don't have that, that accent. I can play a ghetto girl, only comedic. Like, I can't do a serious, like, yo, what up kind of thing. Like, I had to do it as a joke, so you can't take me seriously. So I try to stay away from those roles where they're like, we need a girl who's urban, who's going through some, who's from the South or something. I can't do it really, because first I try to connect to that, but it doesn't really work for me. And as an actor, I know I should be open-minded to that, but I will work on that when it comes down the road. But for now, I'm just going to perfect what I'm good at, which is the comedic and the serious upscale. I guess a lot of people call me the Kerry Washington type or the Gabrielle Union type. That's the types that I've been told I relate to, like the younger version of that, because of the way I uphold myself and the way I speak.
I'm from Calexico, and growing up in a border town, I was literally next to the fence. And a lot of these roles are my best friends. They're people I grew up with, my neighbors, my family. The irony is that I never had, a very linear, part of this, because of my upbringing, because of God, because my grandmother raised me. I wanted to be there for my, set a good example for my two brothers. But yet I take on these roles. And yes, they've asked me to do that, and then I would tell them that's not the way they're portrayed in real life. And so there's that that conversation, right? And then at the end of the day, we would come to agreement. But it just wouldn't be natural for me to portray them such in a way. But at the same time, I want to please the casting director or the director. So there's a balance that we have.
Just because I try not to let it get to me, I guess. It's different on different days. I mean, some days when I look like at audition notices, I'm just like, I wish, I were more that stereotype, or I wish I were more that ethnicity, and I wish, I was fitting, or I could fit in that category. And then on other days, I'm just really proud of who I am. But yeah, those days get fewer and fewer, I would say.
I've been into auditions where it's like, oh, we didn't even know you had tattoos. Perfect. Show your tattoos. Like, doesn't he look? And it's like, wow. Like, I just went from being like auditioning from Innocent David, you know, little guy down the street, to now I'm about to be like the bully in the whole production because I had tattoos. Once again, just that stereotype forcing me into playing a character that I'm, like I said, once again, have no issue playing, because I do understand as an actor, you're acting. But once again, you do want to play David some other times, or the doctor, or the lawyer, or, you know, the general, versus your same stereotypical low rankings in the production parts. You know, I would play a wonderful principal, but I understand also in this traditional society in Hollywood, there's, you know, the normative look. And once again, I feel once we break those barriers of that normative look, you know, you're gonna get to see so many different type of talents from so many different type of people, just everywhere, literally. Once we just like stop just living in a closed-minded mind frame, we'll see so much in life. We'll get to appreciate and understand so many different type of people, characters, roles, everything.
When I look at like casting notices for, you know, certain like film projects that's going on in LA now, I was looking at some before, like thinking of myself, like, could I play this character? Yes. You know, it's like looking for hard teenager to play like in a gang. He's, you know, he's very poor and he's like really blah blah blah. You know, there's so much about like these hard urban character. And I was like thinking, like, if I walked into the audition, do I need to dress like that just so they can see past like how I would normally present myself in audition? Would they be able to see past like how I look to portray that character? So yeah, I think sometimes I do feel pressured that I need to like be kind of extreme just to get noticed. Even though I am very confident in my talents and abilities as an actor, I feel like sometimes like image plays so much into like what you're able to get cast in just from like the first interaction with the casting director.
Just the regular, normal guy, like, you know, hang out, have a beer with, and doesn't cheat on his wife, and doesn't, you know, beat his kids or abuse his kids. No, those roles don't go to African American guys in a drama. Maybe in a sitcom, but it's always funny, like, but never just like, hey, he's just a normal guy, like the guy you have a beer with, you know, while you're watching the game on Sunday. And there's not enough of those roles. It's just, you know, he's an accountant. That's it. He's not like, you know, he didn't play sports in college. He wasn't a basketball player. He's got his degree in accounting, and the guy, you know, owns the accounting company. Or never happens. Never. I hope that changes, but I don't know.
So I do think that there are ways that you can navigate this whole journey. You can still do it with dignity. You can still kind of be who you are, you know. So I struggle with that all the time in terms of who I am to the market, you know, and who I am as a person, you know, like what is the balance?
Look, it's no surprise that African American males are still overwhelmingly cast as not the great guys. It's just a fact of life. You know, I think in some cases it's shifted a little, and there's probably certainly more roles available today as positive roles than there was, say, 20 years ago. But it's got a long way to go, right? I mean, a long, long way to go. And I'm not really sure what it's gonna take. Like, you know, I just saw that Denzel Washington wants to play James Bond. And that'd be great. I don't think it's ever gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna happen because black guys are not that guy. You know, we're not that. But you know, you could be the doctor, you could be the pilot, but you know, and now you could be the president, right? On occasion. I mean, Morgan Freeman played the president once or twice. But there's just not enough positive roles that are reflective of the positive of some of the positive people that are in the society at large. You know, it's still very like, it's easy to be the robber or the drug dealer or the, you know, janitor. You know, I just had I had a job, and I was originally hired to play like the lead lawyer. But then when I went and showed up, they actually were like, yeah, well, you know, they changed it last minute. He's the more lawyerly type. Well, yeah, he's the more lawyerly type because he's a white guy and he probably looks like, you know, he could be of like maybe a Jewish background, so more stereotypical. The stereotype worked for him, didn't necessarily work for me, right? But that happens, and it's unfortunate.
Well, it used to be a lot of the African American ghetto girl, but I feel like they've done such a good job of branching out of that, and I'm so grateful for that because I'm so not the ghetto girl. So I'm really happy about that because now we have Megan Good. She does the mean girl. She did Deception last year, and she was playing the detective, and that was just great. We have Kerry Washington doing Scandal, fantastic. Even on the following, we have an African American girl that's around my age, that's playing Joe Carroll's like stepdaughter-ish type of thing, and she's African American, playing against Kevin Bacon. Like, that's awesome. And I think that the industry is definitely kind of starting to open up doors for us, and I really appreciate it because I'm here and I'm ready.
Well, I guess it depends on where you're looking. I mean, I feel like there have been some things that have been really, really great for African American males. Like, you have things like, you know, 12 Years a Slave that just came out with some really, really, you know, Chiwetel Ejiofor is, you know, amazing actor. And then you have a lot of sitcoms now that have, you know, like Blackish, or, you know, like thinking back a little bit like The Game, and like these actors are, it's almost like it's a very similar niche of a type for actors. But I mean, I feel like, I think it's getting better. It's not so much like the whole urban thing, you know. It's like, it's okay for a black guy to be articulate when he speaks. It's okay for him to be like wealthy in a show, you know. I mean, it's not so much like, let's look at this guy in a gang. So I mean, I think it's actually getting a lot better.
Honestly, I think being an Asian is really hard in the industry. Like, to and acting wise, even in singing, it's really hard to get into show business, in any kind of business like acting or singing or even dancing, just because, for example, usually Asians, like if you have, I'm Filipino, so I have tan skin color, so I wouldn't be playing Filipino, you know what I mean? I'd be playing either Mexican or American Indian. I mean, I've never seen, or I have not seen any shows, like TV shows that had like straight on a Filipino character. The only one that I know that there is an Asian person or a Filipino person playing a Filipino character is the Secret Life of American Teenager. It's basically a story of how she's pregnant, how she gets pregnant at a young age. But one of the characters there is Filipino, and he plays a Filipino character. So that's the only time that I saw that someone that's really Filipino is playing a Filipino character. But anything else, it's usually like Filipino playing a Mexican. Like, another example is Vanessa Hudgens. She's half Filipino. Or Rob Schneider, he's half Filipino also. He's half Filipino, half Jewish. So I think people who are half Filipino have a better in than being like Filipino American like me. I don't know why, but it's just from what I've observed, it's way easier when you're half, because I think when you're half, you don't look quite Filipino.
First, gender, being female, sexually. It's like, after the girl is sexual, she's a tomboy, she's like a little nerdy type of girl. You know, that's the categories that we're being, but more so sexy, everything's just sexy. And as a black female is more so, okay, well, either you're like, once again, either you're playing this, you know, not so educated, or you're the bougie black girl, you know, the one token black girl is what I like to call it. And I'm used to that because I went to a private school all my life, and boarding school, I was the one token African girl. So for me, I'm like, oh, it's one token black girl, okay. So that's where you are. Or you're just the hard ass girl, like the hard ass black girl. Don't mess with her. You know, she can be ghetto, but she can also be proper, but don't mess with her, you know? So it's just, I want to see more comedic Black women out there, you know. That's what I really want to see.
If it's not a slave in the Amistad, you know, once again, it's a crooked cop. If I do get the rankings of actually getting the opportunity to play an officer, I'm always technically going to be the bad guy or portrayed to be the bad guy, at least for the character. Not necessarily saying the production is making me, Trey Carswell, a bad guy to the world. Because, you know, once again, we have fans, people love us as actors. But it does suck when, you know, you have that traditional outlook as far as like the African American male being an actor. Like I said, it's always plugged back into being that villain. And like I said, it's coming, which sucks because it's also, you know, that's what you get in media, and that these are the things that, you know, change our thoughts and that controls our minds and how we think and view things in life. And once again, if you always have that same vision or, you know, that same image of an African American male, like, oh, he's the bad guy, you're gonna probably just also look at that person too in life. So I'm not comfortable with it, you know, the traditional portrayal of a African American male being some type of crook.
Do you think that you are capable of changing people's minds about the roles that you're set to play? So you don't have to play either the friend or the love interest, but you want to play something more serious?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think I can do that. And I hope I can I get the chance to do that sometime. But yes, I do believe that I am more than the best friend or the love interest.
But I'm surprised by the number of breakdowns that I see. It's like I'll see these breakdowns and they're like, it's an entirely white cast. It's like not a single person of color. And I'm like, how the hell is that a reflection of real life? You drive around Los Angeles and you just look at the people, or New York or any major city, you know, minorities, if you're African American, they're probably 10 to 12 to 15% of the population. Hispanics are probably 30 or 40%. Well, how do you do a movie that's set in modern times in Los Angeles and don't have a single person of color in it? And it just, you know, it just amazes me. Like, I couldn't do a movie with an all-black cast because it wouldn't be reflective of reality, you know? So, you know, it's sometimes frustrating by the number of roles that just aren't available, and then the ones that are, there's still a stereotype that's there. And, you know, hopefully one day that'll change.
I feel like the struggle is not necessarily in the casting room now. I feel like the struggle is now with encouraging writers to write those interesting roles. Because now in the casting room, people are more aware and mindful, and so if there is discrimination or stereotypes or even racism, it's a little bit more tactful. You know, they're not as blatant about it. They're not going to say, oh, will you do martial arts? Even if they might be thinking about it, they won't say it because, you know, it's a little more of a political conversation now, so people are more mindful. But I don't think that it means that the paradigm isn't there, or that the thinking or the logic isn't there, because, you know, it's sort of old habits and old behavior. So I think that you still see the residual effect of it there.
Physically, my type limits me because people look at me and they see I'm really skinny, so I will get cast as gay characters or, you know, just like really like the comedic relief type characters in like plays. But my voice, and, you know, lends me to do things like Titus Andronicus or Aaron in Titus Andronicus by William Shakespeare. I can do The Tragedy of Coriolanus by William Shakespeare. I have a really like strong speaking voice for that language. So it really just depends. Like I like to go to auditions and really like wow people, like to say like, oh, I wasn't expecting this guy to be able to do that.
They were talking amongst themselves, and that's the first impression that I got, where they looked at one another and they said, well, what do you think? He makes a good cholo, or he makes a good, you know, gangster. And that was it. I mean, there wasn't any more, you know, roles, you know, those were pretty much it for me.
I have mixed feelings about it. You know, once again, it's a blessing just to be cast in anything. So I still try to stay optimistic about what I'm being casted for, even if it's something that I am, you know, starting to be overwhelmed with, like, well, I'm an educated man, you know. I know, you know, the exterior can come off as, you know, that's typical, you know, social stereotype. But once again, I have so much to offer. So with that being said, I would like to do that with my characters, and and get to play other roles, and experience other roles and other characters that I know that are out there, versus being still confined to that one. Hey, you're a black guy, so you're the bad guy. You're a black guy, hey, you're the drug dealer. It at times, like I said, it does become discouraging, but once again, it's just a blessing to be able to get to act, period. I'm not a drug dealer or a bad guy, so I'm acting. So once again, I do take it as a blessing and just look at it optimistic.
In the beginning, it was fun, but then it got kind of more frustrating because I wanted to show what I got and what I can do and what I can act, and because there's a lot of typecasting, I have the feeling, in this industry. It is really hard for me to actually, get dramatic roles or go out for them, or to be the protagonist in whatever they're looking for, because they don't see me as one and they won't cast me as one, I have the feeling, because I've never gone out for the big major roles in web series or movies or whatever.
Why can't just black women be normal people? And I feel like the media, entertainment industry impacts how people look at other cultures. I know this is deteriorating from what you said, but an example was I was hanging out with some of my friends from Japan. They just started interacting with black people, and me and my girlfriend were the first black girls they've ever hung out with. And they kept asking us, like, do you guys talk like this? Why don't you guys say that? And I'm like, wow. And that's what they see in movies. Because black girls are like this, and in music videos, black girls are shaking their asses. But yet me and my girlfriend and I were very proper, and we speak very good English, that they were so shocked, So that's the way media portrays black women, right. With that, and it brings the money, right? So some people, you have to go for the money, because you have to survive, right?
Growing up in the projects, you see another sense of the world, and you want to bring that out, and that's why, ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be an actor, to show people that. And at first, I was very reluctant. I was like, you know what, we're not just your gangsters or your mobsters, your drug cartels, or your janitors. We're businessmen, we're lawyers, we're, working father in the fields, etc. And I think I did a disservice to myself and to the public by really not taking on those roles. And so now, in hindsight, now I embrace it wholeheartedly. I do embrace it, with the passion to show those, emotional, intangible elements that, the audience wouldn't know they exist. So now I actually tackled those projects on purpose.
I have several Mexican American actor friends, or some of them are Latin American, South American or whatever, and they get really frustrated because they have to go in there and play the gangbanger, and they get frustrated. And for me, we live in LA, and so the Hispanic population is really, really big here. It's prominent, and a lot of the writers in LA are very aware of that culture. They're aware of sort of the fact that a lot of people here in LA speak Spanish, and you almost have to. And so a lot of that filters into the material that we do here in LA. And so for me, I say to him, well, at least you're getting jobs, man, And I know a lot of my friends who are Middle Eastern, like years ago, after 9/11, when we were dealing with Homeland Security, that became such a big, prominent sort of piece of the conversation. And I had friends who were Middle Eastern, and they suddenly were working, because that became, a centerpiece for the country in terms of how shows that we see. And so, it's really interesting, so one side you're like, oh, but the other side is like, hey man, you're working. But I do think in Hollywood, whether you're white or minority, I think there's truth to what you said, which is that they have to know what type you are before you can start stretching yourself.
What are the character roles that you've auditioned for in the last 6 months?
I've really been getting into characters that I think that I'm right for the industry right now. So it's been like the teenage girl, or the mean girl, because they love me as a mean girl, or the really sweet, bubbly girl. So co-star roles like that. And I'm really excited because I'm finally getting into the things that I feel like I'm right for.
I've played a daughter, I've played a soldier. I'm currently working on a project where I play an Iraq war veteran with PTSD. And so I've played the love interest. I've played a lot of different characters, I must say. And I think I've also been very cautious of certain roles. I don't want to, I'm not desperate to play any type of role. I want to try to humanize these characters, and I'm attracted to characters that are multifaceted. And frankly, I've been given a lot of those opportunities.
I've auditioned for like the schoolgirl, the girl next door. So those two are usually ones that I audition for. The two main ones, yeah. That they like give to me and that's all I get. Do you know what I mean?
It's been lots of moms and nurses and doctors, that kind of thing.
Drug cartel boss to mobster, you know, mafioso, like Italian mafia. Also, not too much, but I would say like the cleaning crew, the janitor types.
I think it would always be like the best friend, I would say. The best friend of the protagonist. So always supporting, more or less, because the protagonist was required to be Caucasian or white, and I'm not white, so.
I don't get nervous much in auditions, and I'm, again, there for a job, and I'm fitting a job description, so I don't take any of the rejection personally. I would see me as, again, the every girl, the every woman, the kind of chameleon, if you will. That you can put her in judge robes. You can make her into, gosh, I played a mafia girlfriend. You know, I mean, there's just that whole range of me that I can kind of fit into. So I'm hoping that they see the diversity. But I think probably what they see always is a mom or a wife or those kind of things. But it does depend on how I dress. So if I can have the opportunity to dress for a character, I will spend a lot of time getting the right look to give them a different impression, and that's helped a lot.
Because you have this wonderful ethnic ambiguity, do you ever hear from a casting director or an agent manager, don't tell them what you really are so they can just formulate it in their mind?
I haven't really been asked what my ethnic, my background is. But there are opportunities when you apply for jobs to check those boxes, and I always check kind of the Mediterranean, Hispanic, ethnic ambiguity, anything to do with that is what I go for, because I know that I have that. I understand what my look is, what I can be cast in, what people like me, what I book. And so that seems to be what it is.
I was interning for a commercial agent for a while, and she would always say, just say ethnically ambiguous, you can play anything you want. Because I can pull off the Middle Eastern, I can pull off the Armenian, Greek, I could pull off all that kind of, you know, area of the world. Besides the extremes, like I can't play a Russian, for instance, because I'm not blonde. Or I can't play the Ukrainian, that they fall into that specific look of blonde characters. I can't play those, and I was specifically told that, actually. But everything else around that, especially my commercial agent friend was telling me how, make sure you stick to ethnically ambiguous, you'll be good to go.
This industry, I have often said, is one of the few industries where you can be blatantly racist and sexist and get away with it. And so what I've noticed is the whole term of racially ambiguous popping up everywhere. So you'll have like these breakdowns, and they'll say, we want an African-American male, and you're like, okay, check. And then you'll have like, when it comes to women, usually it's Caucasian, then it's possibly Hispanic, then possibly Asian, then mixed, and then racially ambiguous. And I'm thinking, this is very interesting. Where are the African-American women specifically? Like those who, because there are some women who may appear racially ambiguous but identify as African-American. I know some of them. But so I think this is really interesting. How does this relate to color, skin tone, hair texture? what is this all about? And so sometimes I think I'm going to be really rebellious and I'm going to submit when they say racially ambiguous to see what exactly do you mean? By whose standards? And oftentimes it seems like racially ambiguous is non-black. And so I'm like, and if that's what you want, say that. Say that. And you can save plenty of people money, their headshots, their time. But it almost seems in some cases that African American males are replacing, or like African American males are enough. There's not enough room. You know, it's like we have one black person. And if it's an African American male, we've filled the gap, you know. And I think that's rooted in sexism. I think that's rooted in various forms of oppression.
When I was in my 20s, I was, going to auditions. And my name was not, it was too Spanish. So Carola, which is Spanish, or a Spanish pronunciation, was too ethnic at the time. And then my last name was even more, because my last name is de la Rocha. And so I wasn't able to fit in, so I couldn't go in and say my name was Carola, so I changed it to the pronunciation Carola. So they liked that. They really liked that. They didn't like my last name because my last name was too Spanish. And so at the beginning I was being cast in different, I'd go for anything. And there was, at one point I went actually to a casting where they wanted a Mexican waitress who was dressed like, I don't know if you're familiar with El Coyote restaurant here in Hollywood.
Yes.
So they have the big ruffly skirt and the ruffly blouse and the big hoop earrings. And I went, and the casting director he says, I really like you. You kind of fit the role, but you don't look very Hispanic to me. And I said, oh come on, but I am Mexican, I'm Mexican heritage. And he said, well, he was on the verge, and I was praying, please, please. And he says, yeah, no, I'm sorry. You're very cute, he said to me, and you're even dressed up, to fit the role, but I need someone darker. I need someone that really represents a Hispanic. And that was a turning point for me, because I thought, wow, what do I do? And then I'd go to other casting roles, and they didn't like my last name. My last name was too Spanish. And so I just changed it. I took off my last name and left it for Carola. But I still didn't fit any role. And after that, they said, you should give yourself another name, because Carola just, So I had a hard time searching for the perfect name or perfect last name for my first name. And I finally just got tired of it. In those days, we had, phone books. So I searched the phone book and took out all these different last names. And I had my head full of all these names that just nothing matched. But I thought, I'll just pick one out of the hat. Virtually, I put it in the hat. And I picked it out, and it came out Langerfeld. Carola Langerfeld. Okay, I'll go with that name. But then I went to all the, the auditions for the Anglo or, Caucasian, and I was too dark for them. So I finally gave up. I really gave up. I thought, I don't fit in any role. I don't fit into a Caucasian role. I don't fit into a Hispanic role, so I'm out.
I've been told, or as an actor, if you do that with enough casting directors, and they're just kind of turned off, like, oh, you saw that the listing said this, why are you submitting yourself? So I haven't done it, at least for the submissions on Actors Access. Now, if it's an open call, like when I used to do theater, I would go and audition for a role that's traditionally like a Caucasian role, like in Chicago, the musical, for the role of June. And now, of course, there's a whole bunch of African American actresses that have done that role, but things like that. But for film, generally, in TV, they're so specific that if they're looking to look outside the box, I figure they'll put ethnic, all ethnicities please apply. So I won't even try, sadly.
Honestly, I put like Asian because obviously I'm Asian, but then I remember like people in the past were telling me also put things that you look like. So I just put, okay, American Indian and then Spanish because that's all I can do.
So you put it even though that's not your ethnicity, but you feel...
Just because I think people have told me in the past, just do it because you look like it, and you can probably go for it. So they don't like, for example, there's some actors that I know of that are like half Filipino here in America, but they play a Mexican role. So it's like, I was like, might as well just check it so I get more jobs, hopefully. I'm Japanese, Black, German, and Swedish. So there's like a lot in me, and I don't specify as one ethnicity like alone, and because of my accent, because it's like a little bit British, a little bit American, a little bit German. So it's like, and I can't yet speak one accent alone. So yeah, that's like one of the things that kind of narrows it down.
Can you name 5 television shows where the show's headliner is your gender and ethnicity?
Okay, like I said, The Secret Life of American Teenager, that's one of them. Another one would probably be like, this is tough, there's not a lot of rules. Maybe like The Mindy Project. It's more open to like different ethnicities. Another one would probably be, 5. Hold on, let me think about that. Oh gosh. I actually cannot. Or at least I wouldn't, because all of the TV series I watch or I'm into, they're very white. I would say Scandal, but that's more Black than, like mixed. That's kind of it. Oh gosh. That's terrifying. But no, I can't really think of anything. Probably some Disney Channel shows. I don't know all of them, but just some of them are really open to, because I know one show has an Indian boy now, so like they're kind of open now to, I guess, Asian kind of Indian types of roles. That's all I can name so far, but yeah.
Well, this specific season has been a really interesting season because in the Asian American world, we've really been celebrating the emergence of a lot of really, really wonderful performers, and some of them are friends of mine. Selfie is out. I think it's on ABC. It's John Cho, and he's playing a romantic lead, and I think that's great. It's too bad that it's taken this long for something like that to happen, but he's certainly earned, his right to be, where he is, and I think it's great. Gang Related is another show that I think just recently got canceled, unfortunately, but Sung Kang is a wonderful actor, and he's one of these series regulars in that as well. So there's been several, a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, just got cast as a love interest in Vampire Diaries, Emily Chang, and so it's slowly starting to happen. And Fresh Off the Boat is basically a new show that's out. I think it's CBS or ABC, I can't remember. But it's based on a really, really popular best-selling novel about the Taiwanese American experience, and it sort of revolves around this young kid growing up with Taiwanese American parents. And so it's about that kind of culture shock of dealing with the parents' experience as sort of immigrants in this country, raising a family, building businesses, and then him growing up as an American. But so there's quite a lot that's out right now in terms of, relatively speaking, but I'm sure in terms of percentage, it's still really, really not big enough.
How often do you audition for the lead role or the romantic interest?
Never. I've submitted for a few, and usually they're in projects that are all African American, you know, like a web series or that kind of thing. But I've not been considered like the love interest like ever. And that's one thing. It's funny because I did a web series in New York, and the director, I mean, it was a great script, but the woman that I was portraying was like single and like never able to find a date and that kind of thing. And I kind of mentioned, well, hey, why do we perpetuate this kind of idea that African American women are not marriageable or not able to find love? It's just kind of bugs me. So I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like you know that in the community, African American community that creates films, it's like that cookie cutter. But then if you want to go outside of that, it's not possible because they don't see us as the love interest, so to speak. Right. I think like actresses like Mindy Kaling, like she's been doing great on her own doing that, which is I think what I would have to do in order to break through that.
All the time. Like I said, once again, if I can make that opportunity happen, I make it happen. A lot of the times I'm told like, well, we're looking for another type of, you know, character, and I'll still audition for it anyway, once again, because it's like I enjoy the passion of just actually getting the opportunity to act, you know. But yeah, lead role, principal, the superhero, I go for those auditions all the time because I am that person, you know. I'm Trey Carswell, I am a leader, you know. I innovate, you know, I learn, I teach, you know, so I go for anything that's gonna build me as a person.
I've auditioned for the lead once so far in my acting career in Los Angeles. And it was for a Disney Channel show. And I was playing the older sister. So that was fun.
It's an excellent question. You should ask Kelsey Grammer that. See, he's in Expendables 3, and they're touting him as an action hero now. I haven't seen Expendables 3. That's an excellent question. I've considered myself a character actor. I would like to say I audition for the hero parts. On stage I've been angry a lot. A lot of the roles I play anger very well. A lot of the roles have been angry roles and so forth and so on. As a hero, that's a good question. My largest stage role, line-wise and lead, was I Drive Miss Daisy. I played that at Santa Monica College in 1994. I had the lead role, Hulk Colburn, the role that Morgan Freeman originated on Broadway and the role that he did in the film. That's the longest lead role. You could say he's a hero of sorts. He was very humble, but he stood his ground again for the character that Jessica Tandy played in the film. I would like to audition for more hero roles.
No, I don't get auditions for the hero roles very, very much. And like a lot of the breakdowns that I'll see, you know, the hero role is the guy's Caucasian, and you know, the villain or like the third or fourth guy in charge is like the African American dude, but he gets killed off pretty early. You know, he gets killed like third scene, eaten by the monster or stabbed by whatever or blown up or whatever. And so, you know, I've never had the opportunity to audition for the role where like my character perseveres through the whole film, and at the end of the thing, the credits roll. And yeah, it was one film I did a year and a half ago where I played a cop, and actually he was actually the good guy, and he didn't actually get killed. But that's like so few and far between. It's not even really worth mentioning.
I go for principal roles first. Always do. Always have. Yeah, I want to get in the action. I want to be in there. But it does depend on the type of principal role. If I had a choice between a principal role and a supporting character role that's really juicy, I'm going to go for the character now. When I started, I would not have. But the other one is a little more challenging, a little more depth, you know, finding that humanity in some of those crazy people that you play. That's really fun. That's really the fun part of this whole aspect, this whole acting business, I think, is really doing the backstory and the analysis and all of that. So that is what I would go for now. But I get cast a lot in leads. I do. I even when I'm going out for supporting, they've changed me to the lead a few times.
I do. I submit to the hero roles and the principal roles. I don't discriminate. Even though I embrace these other roles that we talked about, I'm an actor, and I embrace all roles. So yes, I do.
So even if hey, look, they want me to be somebody that I'm really not, I'm the total opposite, but if they need me to go there, it's still acting, it's still a job.
Right, well there's been occasions where, I go in as the bad guy, and they see me in a different light as a hero. But yet, because either the hero is not dark enough or the other character is not dark enough, they always get me. But it's just good to see that they see me in that light as well.
In Milwaukee and Minneapolis, getting things was a lot easier for me because I was big fish in a small pond as far as like my type. There weren't a lot of like African American male actors in that area, so it was easier almost for me to get roles. I walk into audition, like walk away feeling I got that easily. Right. But like here, I look in like audition call for like a 20 to 30 male African American actors, and I walk in, I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like thinking of all my competition.
Right now, I'm a legal 18, so I think that it's really important to embrace that and compete with the 15-year-olds for those 15-year-old roles. So definitely the teenage girls and Disney Channel, Nickelodeon type of things. I love it and I embrace it.
Well, I think so often as an incredible, just multifaceted, self-assured Black woman, a lot of the roles that I see on breakdown services, because now I don't have my agent here, so I'm looking at them. They tend to not always be as layered as I like, be as fresh. The language is not always, they're not always as interesting. And I think that's one of the greatest things about being an artist and being an actress, is that we can tell these really wonderful stories. And I'm attracted to great writing because I'm a writer as well. But so often when I'm looking at these casting notices, sometimes they can be very stereotypical. They want us to put us in just like the ghetto box. And I don't think, because if you know the root in the history of ghetto, it did not begin with African Americans. So it's layered. Mm-hmm. But I think that I feel very blessed because even though I'm not a household name and I'm not making millions of dollars yet, I still know how to say no. I don't have to say yes to everything, and I don't.
How can a person with a last name like mine play someone who's British? Or if I talk like this, like I'm from East LA, which I was born in Boyle Heights, I mean, I don't look like that. So again, I didn't fit in. So that was my dilemma. And I really virtually gave up. And the sad part, not only giving up, but all these years, it's almost the same. I see young people or young roles. I just read the LA Times not too long ago, and they have all these up and coming, young people in roles, and there was not one Hispanic or Latin, up and coming young actor or actress. It's always the majority are Anglo or Caucasian. There's a few sprinkling of there's Indian and of course the African Americans are Black. So, but Hispanics, it's been a very tough road for us.
And that's why I've been doing stand-up comedy too, because it's my thing. It's me. I write my material, I perform it. It's me, and it's who I am from inside, and no one can tell me no, you can't do that. So it's if I don't do it myself, then I don't see anyone else casting me unless it's like a person that's on the same page and it's like, hey, you'd be great at this and let's cast you as it.
I traveled back to the Philippines back and forth just because when I was 14, I was offered a contract there in the Philippines just to sing. So then I did that for a while, and then I told my dad I missed acting, because the acting in the Philippines is way different from the acting here in America. Like, in the Philippines, they're more dramatic. I think just because of the culture, because of course everywhere is different, but being in the Philippines, they want it more like, if you're gonna cry, you must cry. That's the thing. You must see tears in the eyes. But here, it's like, if you can cry, you can, but if you can't, you know what I mean? It's really chill. But I was really fortunate that I got a contract there, but then I told my dad I miss acting in America. I just miss like playing different roles, because here it's really different. Like, you get to play the mean girl, someone being mentally ill, like those hard, difficult roles. Like, I miss trying to go into roles like that. And like in the Philippines, they don't have roles like that whatsoever. It's basically like there's the bad girl and the good girl, then like, or the bad stepmom and something like that's basically cliche. But I just miss acting here. So I said, Dad, I need to come back.
We don't have a lot of like black people or like even mixed people even or in the industry at all. So when we get people who are of a different skin color or from a different cultural background, they are put in the most typical stereotypes that they are out there. So if they're Japanese, they're very traditional and they walk around in the kimono. If they're black, they're ghetto and they're very shady. Germany is not very broad in that aspect, I would say, but that's only from what I have seen so far. It could be, that there are some like independent movies that try to break out of there, but all of the big blockbusters in cinema from like Germany that were produced there are all white. And if they're not, they're just very stereotypical. They're not very open, as I would say, to, if it's in film. In theater, they don't really care. Or at least that was my experience, because I never had a problem. But in movie and film, they're very, they're very boxed and keep to themselves, which means like white everywhere.
So you think America is actually more progressive?
It's getting there, yes, I do think so, because I have the feeling there are more roles now that can be played or that are open to be played by mixed races or by, anybody really. If you're good, you can play the role. I do feel that it's slowly going that way, but it's like a very slow progress.
So do you feel that your ethnicity prevents you from certain roles?
Sometimes, because like there's a lot of people that are saying like, oh, Asians are getting more in. But then you have to remember there's such a big wide range of Asians. You have Chinese, Vietnamese, Thailand, Filipino. That's a lot. But like, you can't just put it to one. There's so many different types. But I hope I have it in, just because a lot of Filipinos do look Mexican, and sometimes they do look for that Mexican role. So I think I probably have a better chance than, Filipinos have a better chance than other Asians. But at the same time, you have to weigh it out, because they also want Chinese. You know what I mean? They always want the Chinese chick family role too. So I think having this ethnicity that I have is a bit difficult to get in, acting and everything.
But just as an example, I've had meetings with agents, or I've had managers tell me that agents won't see me because they already have an Asian guy. That's just one example where, you're allowed to have all kinds of different white women and white men, but you're allowed to have one Asian girl and one Asian guy, And my manager has tried to convince agents to say, hey, listen, he's a little bit different, or he's this and that. But they're like, well, we already have an Asian guy, and that Asian guy can pretty much do everything, So finding representation has been really kind of an interesting journey. So that's similar to casting, I do a lot of theater, and that's certainly been the case where they talk about diversity casting, but signing the check is a different animal. To get them to actually sign on the dotted line to say, I'm going to cast you, that's a bigger decision. So a lot of them are very interested in meeting you and seeing your shows, but to actually, cast an Asian American lead in a role that's not written for an Asian American, or in a play that's not about the, isn't an identity, driven piece. It's a different dialogue, because, it's like if you have I mean, it's if you have a show that's like got 4 different, you know, white men and women, and you have 1 minority, then it's like, okay, well, that's good. But then if you suddenly have, you know, 3 minorities and 1 white guy, then it's like, is this story about race? Is this story about black people or Asian people? You know, I think that lingers in the back of a lot of people's minds. I don't think it's as on the surface, but as a minority, I certainly see kind of hints of that. You know, that they're almost afraid to make things too ethnic or too cultural, as opposed to, no, it's just an American story.
Yes. Especially in the non-union section of work, just because a lot of like student films and low-budget movies always look for the all-American type, which is either black or white, and I'm neither. So it's like really hard to go out for that, or actually not hard, I can't just go out for that role, because it's just like, you know, we need a white, blonde, skinny female, or we need, you know, the typical ghetto black girl, and it's just like, well, I can't do. So yeah, yes, I do think that I'm kind of limited in my roles.
As an African American and as a female, you're not gonna have a lot of roles that are just written for you. I get a lot of that. And so I'm like, well, how do I break into the industry? You know, I'm African American, I'm young, and I'm a female. No. Well, what's the yes? So I've been focusing on that, and I feel like there are roles for me. And I've been seeing a lot more roles come out for me. And it's not necessarily the main character, but I'm here doing what I love to do. So it's not about being the main character for me. It's about, you know, doing what I love to do, making a living out of it, and just enjoying my job.
What inspired you to be an actor?
My life and my experience. I survived the Blood Diamond War in Sierra Leone. I was given up by my parents to a stranger that they met at the camp to go to live in Senegal. My parents found me a couple years later, and I'm an only child. So I've lived in so many different countries. I've always had just me because my parents are too busy working. So I didn't know that was how acting was I'd go into my own little world and be Princess Sia or be, you know, angry Sia. I'd be different Sias and I'd act it out, and that's just what I was doing. But when I grew up, I was like, okay, I need to go to school, I need to do this. I went into psychology and social work, and I worked with newcomers in Canada, and their stories that I heard, and I kept thinking to myself, this would be amazing if I could play parts and tell the world these stories, you know? And I know there are writers out there that can do this, and that's when I was like, you know what? I'm just dropping out of university, I'm gonna go to school, and from there I got a scholarship to go to 2 different film schools, and now here I am. Yeah, I went to Vancouver Film School in Canada. I got a part-time scholarship there, and then New York Film Academy saw my work, and I got a part scholarship for that, so not a full, but some of it, and came out here.
Gosh, so many people. I mean, I grew up. I watched a lot of films. You know, the greats, Denzel Washington. Everyone wants to be, especially an African American actor, wants to be like Denzel Washington. I really look up to Forrest Whitaker as well. And lately, I've been getting so obsessed with Morgan Freeman. Everything about him on camera just like screams this passion and this like raw energy. And I love his work. But it's like in my personal life, I always wanted to do it. I grew up on a farm, so I didn't have that outlet where I'm from. And then I got into like some things in high school, and then when I got into college, I auditioned for my first play, and I got like one of the lead roles, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So it was a weird path.
But only because it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know, first you have your parents' ideas of what you want to be when you grow up. And then you start thinking, well, I don't know what I want to be. And I liked acting because you could be anything. And I thought, oh, they'll be happy because I'm everything. Like, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, oh, I'm a kid, I'm this, I'm that. And I really love that about acting. And my grandmother, she was the only one who really supported me when I initially said, hey, I want to act. She had me in the church plays, and she had me doing spoken word contests, and she really embraced it and wasn't like, oh, you're not going to make any money. And I thought that was great. So I guess my grandma, in a way.
When I was a kid, I loved Disney movies, and I always it's cliche, but I always dreamed of being like the first Filipino princess. That sounds so funny. I still have the dream till now, but I always dreamed of just being like the cute voiceover of a princess or something. So after like watching Disney movies, I told myself at a young age, like, I felt that I just loved to sing and loved to act, and then I told my parents about it, and I was really grateful that they supported it. You know, I was put into singing lessons, dancing and acting, and from then until now, I'm still doing it. I mean, I just want to grow into my craft, but basically I started with Disney.
Mostly white men. I think, I don't really know. I mean, I think a lot of it is just being, being a kid with wild imagination, and you know, it's just how you're born. I think I've always been that kid who's had a wild imagination, so I've always been into storytelling. Somewhere along the way, I started watching, you know, old movies, and I fell in love with, you know, like Brando and De Niro and James Dean and all these, you know, Jack Nicholson, you know, and a lot of it was just watching old movies. I remember the first time I saw Rebel Without a Cause. I was 12, 13 years old, and I borrowed it from a library. And I remember I watched it, and I remember recognizing that what he was doing in that movie was different from anything else that I'd seen on TV. You know, at the time, you're watching TV, and there's really no like great acting, right? And you're watching action, you know, movies on the big screen. And I was like, there's something, and him being a teenager, I identified with that, and there was something so interesting and rich and powerful and present about that performance. I think that was the first time where I was like, he's doing something different. He's literally just behaving on camera, and they happen to catch it. That was a bit of a seminal moment for me, you know. But, you know, I mean, as an Asian American kid in this country, I didn't grow up with a lot of minority heroes on the big screen, you know, other than obviously Bruce Lee and Jet Li and John Lone and, you know, some of the other more theater kind of like actors. But on the big screen, you know, it was mostly white men.
Oh God. I was 12 years old, and I watched this movie called The Gamer with Gerard Butler and Logan Lerman, and I had a huge crush on Logan Lerman. So I told myself I could only meet him and marry him and be his wife if I got into the acting industry. So I took acting lessons, and I gave up after 2 years. I was just like, nah, this is nothing for me, and I got into writing. And then I don't know what. Oh yeah, my theater teacher came to me in high school, and she asked me if I could help her with the production. I was just like, you know, sure, I have time. So I did it, and then I was on stage, and then I don't know, it made me so happy to be up there and to tell a story and to make the audience feel something so they could escape their normal life. And that experience just reminded me, I don't know, my love for acting that I had a couple of years back. So I pursued acting in London and in Hamburg for a while, and then I wanted to get more into movie and TV because I was very bound on theater over there. And I asked my mom, and my mom was totally against it. She was like, never. Because it's so far away from Hamburg. I'm from Hamburg, I'm German. And it was so far away from there, but I guess I convinced her because I wrote down like how much it will cost and, you know, what I will fill my days with and all of that. And yeah, and now I'm here. I'm trying to pursue my dream to, you know, be remembered and to make people escape reality and, yeah, let my inner child live and, you know, be creative.
The most condescending and mean was it was a professor at the time, but she was a casting director for that particular day and moment and for the particular event. She said, "It's not up to me to say it," and I'm quoting her exactly, "It's not up to me to say it, but the reason why you will never play the leading ladies is because of your weight." She said it exactly that way. And that was a shock to me, and I think I started shaking a little bit because in my heart, I knew I do plus size modeling, so I didn't mind my weight. I never minded my weight. I never felt like I was uncomfortable in my body, because I always, it's my motto, and every girl I would ever help, I would say, dress for your size, not for the body that you want to have. So I always feel like I dress like a lady, and I feel comfortable in my clothes, and I feel comfortable in my body. So when somebody said that to me, all of a sudden, it took all my female women issues and put them in the way of my career. And that was the first time something became an obstacle in my career. Because no matter what my age is, no matter where I'm coming from, I worked so hard to be where I'm at, that no matter what people say to me about packages and characters and types and stereotypes, doesn't get in my way of pursuing what I want. But when somebody lifted the way of the issue of my weight to get in the way of a character that I wanted, that hurt more than I could ever think of. It never got in my way again after that, and to think that she went ahead and gave me the leading lady is that bothered me even more. She went ahead and gave me the leading lady that day when she was casting. But she said that to me the day of. And I was like, you're contradicting yourself, and you hurt me for no reason. So, but yeah, that was a challenge. That was a huge challenge that day. I cried.
I guess the negative thing is just basically not fitting the description. I mean, like, I hope one day, you know, people will be more open to being like, oh, a Filipino girl, a Filipino or any type of nationality can play a ghetto girl. I mean, I know some Filipinos that are ghetto, but I mean, I wish hopefully one day, like I said, they're open to just having different types of people play different types of roles and not just keep it so, you know, so secluded and everything.
It's oftentimes about being able to do martial arts and being able to speak with an accent. You know, I've been asked those two things by agents, by casting directors, a lot, you know, and I've gotten, you know, again, I think part of it is minority actors, you know, heightened sensitivity, but it's also the insensitivity of other people. I've been told so many times, they're like, oh my God, you remind me of, and I'm thinking like, okay, you know, who can it be, you know, De Niro, you know, DiCaprio, who? And then you remind me of Jet Li, of Jackie Chan, you know? And who knows how much of that is sincere, you know, but a lot of it is there's so many pieces in that conversation. The lack of representation and also the lack of people's kind of willingness to see beyond race. So those, you know, there are a lot of things that people have said that kind of would strike me in a way that is, you know, frustrating. You know, I haven't been, you know, it's been a long time since I've been approached with something really blatantly racist. I don't know if it's who I am, or I feel like I carry myself in such a way that people either don't want to have that conversation with me, or I'm lucky enough to surround myself with wonderful people or whatever. But I think in the last 5-6 years, you know, I don't face as much. But it certainly is represented in the number of auditions that I miss out on. The roles I don't get to, you know, play. I definitely think that is another form of, you know, insult, you know, that may not say verbally, but, you know.
What I heard was that, Sia, you need to learn how to be a ghetto girl, because those are the roles that you're probably gonna go for when they just look at you. Because a casting director is not gonna hear your voice until you open up, so you need to learn how to do that. And for me, that was insulting, because I was like, ghetto? Does that mean all black people just go for ghetto roles? I don't understand that. So that hurt me. That really did hurt me. And that's when I decided that, you know, there needs to be a change in this industry. I mean, number one, it's a struggle for women in this industry, period, but let alone women of color in this industry. I mean, look, the Asians haven't even made it in yet, so it's like, you know, as a black person, there needs to be a change in there. So that's that was the most harmful thing?
One time I did go to an audition, and they told me I would sit there, and they told me that I wasn't marketable. Yeah. So I was wondering why, and this was back in the early 2000s when I was doing auditioning and so forth. You look great, hey, but you're just not marketable.
Well, stereotype more because of my height. They asked me if I could lose a bunch of weight, so I would be more model type, I guess. So I could play a model because I'm too fat, I guess, to be a model, and I'm not, too fat to be a model. I'm not fat enough to be like an obese, like, you know, curvy person. So I was on set once for this little web series, and they asked me if I could, you know, for the next episode, if I could lose weight, and I was just like, no, I can't. I'm sorry. Just because I don't want to stoop down to that level where people can tell me what to do and I have to adjust myself, so I will be worth something. I want to, you know, stay the way I am and be true to myself.
There was this one incident when I went into an agency. The receptionist, she was so rude to literally everybody. I mean, she would yell at the minors, like, oh, if you don't have your parent in here, you can't come in. You know, the people who coming in for auditions, you know, once again, she was more so doing it towards the minorities I was noticing. Like I said, I'm a very observant young man, and I was just sitting, I was standing in the line waiting to, you know, approach the receptionist myself. I approached her, you know, politely, kind, ma'am, please, you know, just sign in Trey Carswell for my appointment. And she just like throws it like, and she tells me to go sit in the lobby versus everyone else was actually going into a waiting area of the agency. And once again, not thinking anything negative about it. Just, okay, I go into the lobby to fill out my paperwork. Another black guy comes sitting in the lobby. And I'm noticing, but when the Caucasians, you know, sign in for their interviews, they're being sent into the waiting room. And I just thought that was so interesting. So that did kind of bother me inside. So when the agent came out to like have me, you know, get ready for my interview, I decided not to go through with the process, and I told the agent, you know, I don't feel comfortable with doing it. The agent was like very adamant, like, what's the issue? What's wrong, Mr. Carswell? We actually need your look for something. And I'm just like, you know, I don't want to mention it. I didn't tell on the receptionist. I wasn't trying to be the bad advocate, try to have anyone lose their job, because it's not going to get anywhere in life, you know. I could have easily like, well, your receptionist has been so rude, but like I said, I try not to put that negative energy out there. So I just told the agent I couldn't do the interview. I left. And I felt good inside because I still had my dignity. You know, I felt very disrespected. And honestly, like my mother was telling me, if she's pretty sure the agency does know about this receptionist and her character. So honestly, if they have her like literally greeting people, how do you think the agency is as a whole? So with that being said, I kind of I felt good about that decision I made to just actually walk away from, which could have been a probably major, big, just good thing in my life, but I walked away from it, you know, because I did feel, you know, disrespected, and I did feel like I was being looked down because of, you know, my ethnicity, my race, you know.
What's the most positive thing you've heard someone in the industry say to you?
I had a director that I really respect. Her name is Nima Barnett, and she's like a pioneering African-American director. First woman, African-American woman to ever direct a network television show. And I worked with her on a project, and she pulled me aside and she said, shit, you're really good. And I thought, you know, coming from her, she's been in the industry 25 years and she's worked with like really good actors. Hey, that made my millennium. And I thought, if I never get another comment like that for as long as I work, at least I got one. But you know, coming from her, that made me feel really good.
Thank you. You know, if after you perform, and I've like the most like amazing comment I ever gotten is I did a scene in college, and it's like you know, gave me such a great feedback, and I said, oh, thank you very much for that feedback. She said, no, thank you for allowing me to watch you perform that. And like that's, as an artist, as an actor, like that just like meant the world to me.
You know, there's a lot of stereotypes in acting, like you must play the white girl, the white, you know, try to play dumb. Surprisingly, I remember I did this acting monologue thing, and I had to be this like stereotypical, like, oh my God, white girl, you know. And I did a really good job at it. I was really happy, and my teacher loved what I did, and he totally kept the tape. I mean, like that felt so good to me that I practiced so hard on that monologue, and finally, like, even though I'm Filipino, I could play a different role like that.
I'm always told by literally all genres of people, whether it's Caucasian, Asian, African American, whatever, that I have a beautiful complexion. So I got that a lot, and doing the modeling and the acting on the East Coast while pursuing school.
When someone says, I love what you do, like you are great at what you do, that is the best compliment I have ever heard. It's just someone appreciating the work I put into it, and saying you made the character proud. That's basically what it is, making the character proud.
I think I got cast as an Asian once, for an Asian role, which made me really happy because I don't really look Asian, but I guess they saw it somehow, a little bit in my eyes and something. They're just like, okay, you can have the part. It was for a remake of this Japanese TV series that's very popular over there. And they wanted to cast it with mostly Asians. And so I got a part in that, so I was really happy.
I had a meeting with an agent, one time, and she said, I don't even see you as an Asian American actor. I don't know if that's positive or not, but that's the other side of the coin, is that I see you as more of a different type, but there aren't a lot of roles out there to sort of serve that appetite. But I think positive things are just that he's a great actor, that he's professional, that he's generous and kind and supportive. Those are wonderful things for me to hear. And they don't really have anything to do with race. It has to do with who you are as an actor or as a professional.
This one time I played a deranged husband, and I not only made my wife, cry, naturally, but she was hysterical. She was shaking. She was in so much fear that she didn't know what to do. And yeah, at the time I felt bad. And then there was this one time she slapped me, and then I felt the urge to slap her back, and I did. And then she slapped me, and I understood. I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this, and I apologized, not as Arturo, but as a character, because it felt naturally to do so. But I didn't apologize, because I found out that that's the best, scene that she's done. She's felt the most alive, and it was real. If it wasn't real and I slapped her, then it doesn't make any sense to do so. So yeah, there was no apologies. Everything worked out good, even better than it was written.
Based on what you've learned so far, what's your advice to younger actors who are following in your footsteps? Maybe they came from a little pond and now they're coming to LA and they realize there could be stereotypes, maybe there's not, but they're up against a big pool of people being here in LA.
I feel like at this point in my life, I'm 25 years old, you have to do it now. You have to pursue it. If you don't, then you're gonna wait and you're gonna fall into the same trap that a lot of people do, where they get comfortable in their jobs and they forget about your passion. If the artists are your passion, then you need to pursue it. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. At least you know that you gave it a shot. Coming here, you have to be comfortable in yourself. You have to be comfortable in yourself and your abilities, and go to every casting that you feel that you fit, and hope that someone likes you. And if they don't like you, maybe they can suggest you to someone else that will like you. I've been to only a few castings here so far, but in those castings I've networked with people and I've landed other auditions, or I've been out at a party and I've landed another audition, because you have to just network. This industry, especially in LA, is so much about networking. I read an article about the power of a referral. I wouldn't have known about that audition if I didn't talk to that guy at that party. You know what I mean? So it's getting to know people and just following your dreams. The trip here was, I can get into that. The entire trip here was just a nightmare. Just the process of getting here, and here getting to LA and trying to find a place and trying to find an agent. It's just such a hard battle. But I know that when I'm done, I'm going to have a story and I'm going to be really proud of it. I'm going to be very happy that I did it. So I say go for it.
when it comes to an MFA in acting, in whatever field, because I pursued an MFA in acting for film, where all my 5 years of college were in theater, and before that, all my training was in theater and classical theater. My advice would be to every young girl or every woman that wants to go for an MFA, get an education before that in your field. I can't tell you how many women will walk into an MFA acting program and come from a completely different background, from a completely different education. That hurt women more than somebody telling them get breast implants or lose weight or anything. That hurt women more because they walked into a world they had no shields for. They had no protection. They walked into a world that said, oh, now you have to stand with all your emotions naked on stage. Good luck with that. And you're asking a woman that came from the corporate world, that came from being a mother, that came from chemistry, women that they're used to be heady, all of a sudden you're asking them to put their emotions out on stage. That hurt them more than somebody telling them get breast implants or lose weight. Why? Because somebody would tell them that in the actual outside world too, not just in the theater, Hollywood world. They had men tell them things like that and they'll brush them off. In this industry, women, we somehow learn to walk past those things, even if that split of a second they will hurt. We learn to walk past them. But if you're trying to make a career out of being emotionally raw on stage or in front of the camera, and you have no training behind that, that will scar you for life. And I've seen classmates of mine get out of grad school and never pursue this industry, never even signed up. They had that package in their hands. They walked out, they dropped it in the trash and moved on in life because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the 5 years of training that I had. And I walked in being like, I'm gonna walk out of that and I'm gonna be ready to work. This is just another stage in my career. It's not my career. Does that make sense? For them, it was the end of the road. Grad school was the end of the road. That was sad.
And so all the money they paid, student loans, everything?
Now it's just a student loan, and I'm speaking for specific people that I know. And yeah, that was the end of the road for them. Some moved on to become makeup artists. Some moved on to nothing at all. Some moved on to just having families and kids and not pursuing this business ever again. Because grad school was a scarring experience. It was hard. It's not just going to class every day like any other school that you have to write 10 pages of papers. You're on stage in front of the camera 24/7. Literally, every day you have to be makeup and camera ready. And you have that casting director professor behind the camera saying, you're not going to get the leading lady because you're fat in the real world. But here, yeah, sure, here, why not?
For me, it comes down to, am I willing to live with the rest of my life where people are like, hey, you're that black girl that was like that, or do I connect with that character? That's what it comes down to. Because honestly, money comes and goes. It does, but it's my happiness and how do I feel about myself? That's more important to me.
What can you really do that's not like if you have a regular job, that's fun, it's interesting, but you'll never experience the same thing you experience when you're in a creative environment, when you're putting together a play or putting together a documentary or acting in a movie. You don't get that feeling, and that's why people who are actors, they live in their 80s and 90s because they're having so much fun. You know, they're opening themselves to everything. You know, you're put in situations that you've never been in before, and it's like a light comes on when you get it, when you know you nailed it. You know, it's great. It's just I can't explain it. If you're talking to someone who does plays or whatever, you can really, they understand what you're talking about. If you do a play, when you leave, you're so jacked up. I mean, you're like in another world. It's like you're so high, you know, but you can't, unless someone experiences that, they can't really know what it feels like.
She said, Mark, you're a bit lazy and a little bit afraid. The flip side of the coin, and I'm going to go segue many years after the fact, I had the pleasure of working in Steven Spielberg's Hook as a pirate. That was 1991, a lot of years, chronological years But he interviewed all the pirates himself, one-on-one. I submitted through Dramalog, got called in. I was non-union at the time, background. I did some voices and accents, and he just looked at me and said, "You got a lot of guts." So from the flip side, you got a lot of guts. And throughout the years, Karen, I've attempted to work out of that laziness and that fear, and have a life as well, work regular jobs and so forth and so on. But I can always, but I say that to say there's always room to even work more out of the laziness and the being afraid, the fear of success.
Even in regular life outside of acting, I just wish that people could get along and that people could see each other just past the skin. Because if we all peeled our skin off, we would just be the same. You couldn't tell at all who we were. I think if people, the case in point with Saturday Night Live, for instance, when they were not forced, but just compelled to bring on African Americans, and just, they still need to bring on Latina actors and stuff, but that is a great example of how the show was enriched because of these different perspectives. Even the show Orange is the New Black, look at all those beautiful women, and they're all different, and people love that show. I think if people would realize, the executives, maybe the powers that be, that these kind of things work when you don't see the shade of the skin, it's just different characters. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we need to do, and I think it would be successful money-wise, oddly enough, and also creatively as well.
Right.
I remember this history course in college, and the history teacher, first day of class, came out and said, "All right, I want all of you to pull out a piece of paper and pencil and write the name of your hero. We're gonna spend the next 12 weeks writing a story, a history story. So before we start, decide on who your hero is, and I'll be right back." And so the professor leaves the classroom, and everyone's got their pen and pencil and paper, and they're jotting a name down, And he comes back, and the class was about like 56, 57 kids, And the teacher comes back and collects all the paper, and he's going through it. And out of the 56, 57 kids, he only saw 4 female names, right? So even the women in the room were writing men as their heroes. And so he only saw like 3 or 4 female names. And out of all of them, there was maybe like 1 or 2 whose names were, ethnic. The rest of them were like, Harrison Ford or, Panama Jack or, something kind of like iconic, and Bruce Wayne, or whatever, And so I think that has a lot to do with the way we grow up. We're watching Clark Kent. We're listening to Bruce Wayne and Peter Parker. And these are really kind of like apple pie American names for heroes, and they're men, and they're square jawed, and they're kind of like tough, and they're not. And so that comes into how we grow up, and when we get into a position of reimagining our stories, we basically regurgitate what we've eaten all these years without thinking about it. And even as a minority writer, when I've written, I've had to really mindfully say, well, does it have to be a guy? Does it have to be white? Does it even have to be Asian? So I think even before we get into the casting room, about your question, sometimes it has to do with, from the writer, how you kind of make the source material. If you make it kind of really interesting, it almost gives everyone else permission to make it more interesting.
If someone insults me and they're not apologetic, if they're having a bad day, obviously some people have bad days, and you have to figure out how to communicate with that person. But if someone is insulting you and someone is treating you, being abrasive with you, and you say, listen, can we talk? Are you having a bad day? I just feel, I don't know if maybe you're having a bad day and you're not really focused today, that you're being aggressive towards me. Is there a problem between us? And try and figure out a way to figure it out, because we're humans. We all do the same things. We just do it differently. So I want to find out, well, how can we work together? And if we can't, obviously, you just can't work with that person. But if you take that time out to try and resolve it, 9 times out of 10, you will be able to resolve it. One, you're there for a reason. They have a project, they want to complete it. And if you say, well, I don't want to be in this project, that's a problem. So they want you to stay there. I mean, they want you to work with you. So, but most of the time, I don't have that kind of problem. I feel that, I can communicate well with people, and I don't really feel that that's going to end everything. But obviously, if it's just so unbelievably terrible and you can't resolve it, there's no way you can turn a negative into a positive, it's obviously you can't work with that person.
In the beginning, it was more like, wow, maybe I'm too aggressive, maybe I'm too passionate, maybe I'm too. But see, that's the way I am. That's the way I was brought up to. That's me. That's who I am. And so instead of diminishing that, instead of putting yourself in a, kind of like in the fetal position, and say, I'm not going to do that. Go ahead and do that. Tackle that. I tell myself, you embrace that, take that in, and do the best that you can, with that particular role.
I guess by putting myself out there, which is a very vulnerable place to be in, but I do think that if you have a dream and you pursue it and you're 100% committed to that dream, I think you can manage anything, and that's the hope I have right now, is just to get out there, to be seen, to take my acting classes, to get to know people, to do as much work as I can, and then maybe someday write my own things so I can give myself the roles I know I can play, and then through that kind of spread out and let people know that I'm more than what I seem to be.
You have to stay true to yourself. Know who you are. No one can tell you who you are. No manager, no agent, no huge Hollywood production. You have to honestly know who you are as a person. And if you know who you are as a person, you're gonna just excel and go the furthest of the far. You just stay focused, do what you have to do. But once again, the main part to the success is knowing who you are, stand true to it. And if you don't fold and break yourself, you're gonna excel. You're gonna go far. You're gonna do great things in life. No one will be able to stop you, because in your mind, in your heart, I can do this. It's not going to be easy, but anything, worth fighting for is totally worth having. My grandmother tells me that all the time, easy come, easy goes. But those things that you work your ass off for and you go hard for, trust you will see some type of just vital, improvement somewhere down the line. And you take on challenges that you never thought you can take on. But once again, you know who you are, so you can take on those challenges.
I would say start with your history. That's what I would say. Because if you know specifically when it comes to African Americans, because oftentimes people tend to erase that really big chunk of American history called slavery, and then the Jim Crow era, and then the civil rights, all of that. So I think knowing your history would really, really anchor you, because we're resilient. And so often we had to create our own reality because of the levels of oppression and brutality, which we're seeing now. History is sadly repeating itself in some ways. Things have gotten better in some ways, and it's gotten worse in some ways. And I would think finding artists outside of Hollywood who inspire you. It could be a teacher, it could be someone in your family, it could be someone on Broadway. But I think sometimes with the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, we forget that these are real people. And there are like these light bulb moments like, oh my God, So I think history, definitely working, like training, like knowing your craft. B. Richards, there's a book, Lisa Gay Hamilton, I don't know if you're familiar with A Black Woman Speak. I think every every person on this planet, especially every actress, not only African American actresses, but especially African American actresses, should see that film, because I watched it and I cried like a baby, because I said, oh goodness, you can survive and you can thrive even without being a household name. You can create these wonderful opportunities for you, for yourself. And I was looking at someone like Bea, and I'm thinking, wow. So, I mean, there's no one answer, but I think that's what has helped me anchor me, knowing who I am, not apologizing for myself, self-love, because a lot of people are attracted to the entertainment industry. A lot of broken people are. That instant gratification, you want to be famous, you want to prove something to your family members who said you would never make it. You know, there are all these reasons why people flock to a city like this, and New York and everywhere, but specifically cities like this. And I would say, if you don't know who you are, learn who you are. Because something I told my students, I don't want you to just be the most amazing actress or actor. I want you to be an amazing human being, because when the lights fade and there is no applause, you have to be okay with who you are, and you have to be okay with the choices you made. And that does not mean that I don't have moments of doubt. That does not mean that I don't have moments of fear. That does not mean that I don't feel some type of way when I see other actors getting roles that I turned down and, you know, possibly making more money than me. But I'm clear about my mission. And when you're clear about your mission, and when you know that this is your true calling, nothing can stop you. Not a racist casting post, not a misogynistic filmmaker who wants to put you in a box when you're on set, not a PA who comes up to you talking about girlfriend, you know, the stereotypes. It's a good journey, you know? And that's why I'm excited to do this, because even saying this, like I'm saying it to you all, but I'm saying it to myself as well, to keep pressing forward. But I do know it to be true that you can thrive if you want to. And part of that is not being so desperate. There's a level of like hunger you need, you know, to make you, you know, it pushes you, but that desperation where you want to do every single thing, you have choices, and it's powerful. And I feel empowered because I activate my power to say no. Do I always do it? No, but I try very hard to not say yes to things that don't feel well, even if it pays well. And for that reason, I feel like I'm in my own lane. I do. I feel like I'm in my own lane. And I'm grateful. So that's it.